They call it freedom, they call it empowerment, they call it living your best life. But Friedrich Nietzsche called it decadence, the slow rot of a culture that mistakes X for strength. Carl Jung called it psychic disintegration, the crumbling of the soul beneath the weight of compulsions masquerading as choice. And both the Bible and the Quran called it sin, not simply because of moral rules, but because of the way it fractures the human spirit. So let me ask you, is casual sex really liberation, or is it slavery disguised as fun? Think about it. Modern culture tells us that hooking up is bold, fearless, and consequence-free. Swipe right, escape boredom, chase excitement. It sounds like choice, but what if that freedom is nothing more than a leash? What if every so-called liberated encounter is training your mind to be less capable of authentic love, less capable of intimacy, less capable of becoming who you truly are? Nietzsche warned us about this mistake, the confusion of stimulation with fulfillment, of pleasure with purpose. Jung went even further, showing how when we abandon our deeper values, the unconscious doesn't vanish, it takes over. You don't control your cravings control you. This isn't about morality in the narrow sense. It's about sovereignty. Every time you trade depth for momentary thrill, you give away a piece of your soul. And the tragedy is that you don't notice the cost until the bill arrives. By then, the ability to bond, to trust, to love has been hollowed out. So again, ask yourself honestly, is casual sex truly freedom? Or is it the most seductive form of slavery you will ever willingly embrace? Before we dive deeper into this journey through Nietzsche, Jung, and the hidden truths modern society refuses to confront, I want to invite you to support this channel. If you find value in these conversations, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when I release the next piece of content designed to challenge, awaken, and transform the way you see yourself and the world. Everywhere you look, the message is the same. Netflix tells you it's normal. TikTok sells it as trendy. Instagram floods your feed with glossy images that frame sex as casual, carefree, and consequence-free. The script is rehearsed. This is empowerment. This is choice. This is fun. But if you look beneath the surface, you'll find something far darker at work. What society celebrates as liberation is, in reality, psychological enslavement. Think of the cocaine addict at 3 a.m., hollow eyes, trembling hands, chasing a high that grows weaker each time, but demands ever stronger doses. That's casual sex. It hijacks the very neurochemistry that nature designed to bind us to one another. Oxytocin, dopamine, vasopressin, and repurposes it into an engine of endless craving. The bonding mechanisms that once ensured love, trust, and stability are rewired to chase novelty, intensity, and escape. But the destruction runs deeper than chemicals. Each casual encounter trains your mind to view intimacy as disposable. The very thing that was meant to be sacred becomes cheap. The brain learns, bonding is temporary, love is replaceable, connection is just another thrill. And like the addict who keeps upping his dose, you start to need more encounters, more stimulation, more partners. Yet with each new chase, the satisfaction shrinks. This isn't harmless fun, it's soul corrosion. When Nietzsche spoke of decadence, he didn't just mean indulgence in pleasures. He meant the collapse of values that once gave meaning to human life. Casual sex fits perfectly into this picture. It dismantles the very structures that make authentic love possible. Instead of creating strength, it breeds weakness. Instead of elevating you, it degrades you into someone who confuses addiction for passion. And Jung saw the same danger. He warned that when unconscious desires dominate, we mistake slavery for freedom. You tell yourself you're in control, that you're choosing. But look closer. Who is really in control? The sovereign self, or the craving that gnaws at you until you give in? The result is a generation of spiritual refugees, people surrounded by encounters yet starved of intimacy, surrounded by bodies yet unable to love, surrounded by opportunities, yet incapable of finding meaning. They don't realize they're in a war because the battlefield is invisible. It's in their psychology, their nervous system, their very capacity to experience connection. And here lies the cruel paradox. The more casual sex promises fulfillment, the more empty it leaves you. The more you indulge, the harder authentic love becomes to recognize, let alone sustain. You think you are free, but in reality you are enslaved, bound not by chains of iron, but by chains of craving. So when society tells you, this is freedom, you must dare to ask, freedom for whom? Because if the price of your so-called liberty is the erosion of your ability to love, to trust, to stand whole within yourself, then what you've purchased isn't freedom at all. It's a carefully marketed form of psychological servitude, sold as empowerment, but delivered as emptiness. The addict never sees the cage until it's too late. And in the same way, millions don't see that the cage of casual sex is already closing around them. Each new encounter tightening the bars, each indulgence making escape more difficult. Liberation is the promise. Slavery is the result. Nietzsche once said that humanity's greatest sickness is not physical weakness, but spiritual decay, the confusion between stimulation and fulfillment, between pleasure and purpose. If we take his warning seriously, then modern casual sex culture is not progress. It is decadence, the very disease Nietzsche foresaw, a civilization trading meaning for sensation, mistaken indulgence for empowerment. What does decadence look like in practice? It is the man who confuses conquest with connection, believing that each new partner proves his strength. It is the woman who mistakes attention for affection, hoping that validation will substitute for love. On the surface, they look alive at parties, in clubs, on dating apps, but beneath the glitter lies exhaustion, cynicism, and despair. They are consuming themselves, not growing. As Nietzsche warned in Beyond Good and Evil, this is what happens when culture collapses into hedonism. We worship pleasure, but in that worship we destroy ourselves. Carl Jung, analyzing the same malaise, saw it as psychic disintegration. When the unconscious dominates, when instinct runs unchecked, the individual becomes fragmented. In casual sex, Jung saw what he called shadow possession. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we repress: loneliness, insecurity, fear of intimacy. Instead of confronting these fears, we project them outward and try to silence them through sex. We convince ourselves we are free, but in truth, we are acting out unconscious compulsions. The man who cannot be alone, who frantically seeks his next partner, is not liberated. He is fleeing from the terrifying mirror of his own soul. To understand the cost, consider Jung's concept of the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to navigate society, the professional self, the charming self, the polite self. In moderation, it is useful. But in the world of casual sex, the persona inflates dangerously. You craft one mask for every encounter: the seducer on Tinder, the intellectual on Hinge, the carefree spirit at the bar. Each persona is designed for temporary performance, and none of them connect to your core identity. Over time, the mask becomes the master. You forget who you were before you began playing roles. This is why Jung described persona inflation as a path to collapse. The authentic self, your true values, your real longings, gets buried beneath layers of masks. You begin to live for appearances, not substance. You don't ask, who am I? You ask, who do they want me to be? In that shift, something sacred is lost. Nietzsche would call this loss the triumph of the herd over the individual. Instead of creating your own values, you conform to the shallow values of your age. Casual sex equals empowerment. Detachment equals strength. Consumption equals freedom. But this is not freedom. It is what Nietzsche described as slave morality, a value system that weakens rather than strengthens. You may feel powerful while seducing, but it is the false power of the addict, not the true strength of the creator. Let's bring this into a daily example. Think of the man who scrolls through dating apps late at night. He tells himself he's exploring options, being free, living his best life. But deep down, anxiety gnaws at him. He cannot rest without validation. Each match gives him a brief hit of dopamine, but the satisfaction fades instantly. He believes he is choosing, but in truth, the craving is choosing for him. Jung would diagnose this as shadow possession. Nietzsche would name it decadence. Both would warn, this is not empowerment, it is enslavement. Or consider the woman who has learned to adapt her personality to each man she dates. For one, she's the wild adventurer. For another, the nurturing caretaker. For another, the intellectual equal. She tells herself she is versatile, adaptable. But in reality, she is lost. Years later, she cannot remember which interests were authentically hers and which were masks she wore for someone else. This is persona inflation in its purest form. She is surrounded by masks but absent from herself. And yet, both Nietzsche and Jung offer a way out. Nietzsche's answer was the Bermensch, the one who transcends herd values and creates his own. He insisted that real strength is not the ability to indulge, but the ability to discipline oneself, to forge meaning in a meaningless world. To follow Nietzsche here is to recognize that casual sex culture is not empowerment but decay, and to have the courage to say no to what everyone else celebrates. Jung's solution was individuation, the lifelong process of integrating all parts of the psyche, light and shadow, into a coherent whole. Individuation demands that you face your loneliness, your fear of commitment, your hunger for validation, not mask them with encounters, but transform them into wisdom. Instead of scattering yourself across a dozen partners, you reclaim yourself, piece by piece, until you stand whole. Both thinkers point toward the same truth. True freedom is not found in chasing desire, but in mastering it. Casual sex feels like liberation only because it distracts you from the prison you're building inside. Each shallow connection adds another brick. The prison walls grow higher, and one day you wake to find you cannot escape. Nietzsche and Jung alike cry out, break the cycle before it breaks you. And so, the question becomes unavoidable. Will you continue mistaking pleasure for purpose, stimulation for satisfaction, masks for identity? Or will you dare to confront the shadow, to create your own values, to become whole? The choice is not casual, the choice is existential, and the life you live depends entirely on it. Sometimes the truth is too heavy to confront directly. That's why philosophy, psychology, and storytelling often speak in metaphors, because metaphors allow us to see what's hidden in plain sight. If casual sex is so destructive, why can't most people see it? The answer is that they are living inside illusions. Let's break those illusions with the metaphors that reveal what's really happening. Counterfeit currency. Imagine walking into a marketplace where gold has always been the standard. People know its worth because it is scarce, precious, and enduring. Now imagine someone floods the market with counterfeit coins, shiny, glittering, but fake. At first, everyone feels rich. But soon, real gold loses its value because no one can distinguish authentic from counterfeit. This is what casual sex does to intimacy. Love is meant to be rare currency, precious because it is earned, meaningful because it is scarce. But when intimacy is handed out like counterfeit money, everything loses its value. People can no longer tell the difference between lust and love, depth and performance. And the tragedy is that by the time you want to make a real purchase, true connection, your emotional economy has already collapsed. The Museum of Broken Mirrors now picture a funhouse filled with warped mirrors. Each mirror reflects you, but distorted. One makes you look powerful, another pathetic, another seductive. None shows you your true self. After enough time wandering in that hall, you forget what you actually look like. That is your self-image after casual sex. Each partner becomes a mirror, reflecting back their version of you. The bad boy, the savior, the entertainer. Over time, your identity fragments. You become a collection of roles, not a coherent self. Jung called this persona inflation, the danger of mistaking masks for identity. And the cruel irony is that the more you seek yourself in others' reflections, the less you can see yourself at all. The Ponzi scheme of emotions. Consider the infamous Ponzi scheme. Early investors feel rich because they're paid from the money of new investors. But eventually, the system collapses, leaving everyone bankrupt. Serial casual sex operates the same way. Each new encounter promises to deliver what the last one couldn't: fulfillment, intimacy, connection. And for a moment, it feels like profit, novelty, validation, excitement. But the system is unsustainable. The more you invest in temporary highs, the more bankrupt your capacity for sustained love becomes. By the time you realize the collapse is inevitable, it is often too late. You've depleted the emotional capital that could have been invested in something real. Everyday examples. These metaphors may sound abstract, but you see them every day. Think of the man addicted to dating apps. He can't watch a movie without swiping, can't sit alone without validation. He believes he is exploring options, but really, he is training his brain to mistake stimulation for love. Each match is counterfeit currency. Each hookup is another warped mirror. Each cycle of pursuit is a Ponzi scheme, demanding more investors to keep the illusion alive. Or picture the woman who once longed for true intimacy, but now finds herself cynical. Every time a man shows her genuine affection, she wonders, what's the catch? Past encounters have poisoned her well of trust. She cannot receive authenticity because she has been conditioned to expect manipulation. This is what happens when counterfeit intimacy floods the market. It doesn't just cheapen love in the abstract. It corrupts your ability to believe in love at all. And then there are those who laugh it off. They say, it's just fun, no strings attached, but look deeper. The man who boasts about conquests often reveals a different truth when alone: restlessness, anxiety, emptiness. The woman who insists she's empowered sometimes confesses, in quiet moments, that she feels disposable. Behind the bravado lies fragility. Behind the mask of freedom lies the shadow of despair. The cultural dimension. Casual sex is not just an individual choice. It is a cultural economy. Social media glorifies it, dating apps monetize it, and entertainment normalizes it. We are told that scarcity is repression and abundance is liberation. But look at the result. Instead of stronger relationships, we see weaker ones. Instead of confident individuals, we see fragmented identities. Instead of trust, we see suspicion. The marketplace is flooded with counterfeit intimacy, and genuine intimacy is now so rare that many no longer believe it exists. Nietzsche called this the transvaluation of values. What was once considered sacred is now treated as trivial. What once gave life meaning is now mocked as outdated. But this is not progress, it is regression masked as evolution. Jung would call it collective shadow possession, a society possessed by compulsions it refuses to confront. And here is the uncomfortable truth: the metaphors are not exaggerations. They are reality translated into symbols we can grasp. When intimacy becomes counterfeit currency, when the self becomes a hall of broken mirrors, when love becomes a Ponzi scheme, the outcome is inevitable collapse. And the victims are not abstract. They are you, me, and everyone convinced that temporary stimulation is harmless fun. Every decision we make shapes not only our future, but also the architecture of our soul. Casual sex might feel like nothing more than a weekend escape, a harmless indulgence. But over time it rewires the very systems designed to sustain love, identity, and meaning. These consequences are not abstract. They are lived realities, silent tragedies unfolding in millions of lives. Nietzsche and Jung both saw it coming: the corruption of values and the disintegration of the psyche. Let us explore the darkest outcomes. Phantom pain. Imagine a soldier who has lost a leg in battle. Years later, he still feels searing pain in the limb that no longer exists. His nervous system, once wired to that leg, continues to send signals, unable to let go. This is phantom limb syndrome. Now apply that metaphor to the emotional life. Each sexual bond, whether casual or committed, creates biochemical attachment, oxytocin, dopamine, vasopressin. Your nervous system does not distinguish between one-night stands and lifelong partners. Each connection leaves a mark. When the relationship ends, those bonds do not vanish. They linger as phantom pain. That is why people often feel inexplicably haunted by partners who treated them badly. They know, rationally, the person was wrong for them. Yet they can't stop thinking, can't stop longing, can't stop hurting. Their nervous system clings to ghosts. Nietzsche spoke of amor fati, the love of fate, the acceptance of suffering as part of life. But phantom bonds offer no growth, only torment. Jung would call this the persistence of archetypal attachments, ghosts of intimacy that keep you chained to the past, preventing you from embracing the present. Psychological malware. Think of your mind as an operating system. Every relationship installs programming beliefs, habits, ways of relating. In a healthy relationship, this programming enriches you: patience, trust, compassion. But casual sex often installs malware. Partners project unresolved traumas onto each other. Through intimacy, those projections integrate into your psyche. You download their dysfunctions, their insecurities, their wounds. Even after they're gone, the code runs silently in the background. Picture the woman who dated a narcissist. Years later, she still finds herself seeking validation from every partner, even when she knows better. She has absorbed his programming. Your worth depends on my approval. She is running his code without realizing it. Nietzsche warned of the slave mentality, accepting values that weaken you because they've been conditioned to think they are normal. Jung diagnosed this as shadow contamination, the toxic aspects of others becoming entangled with your own psyche. The malware is subtle but devastating. You think you are free, but you are still executing someone else's code. The black hole, perhaps the most terrifying consequence, is what we might call the event horizon. A black hole is a region of space where gravity becomes so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape. Cross its boundary, the event horizon, and you are trapped forever in a downward spiral. Casual sex can do the same to your neurochemical bonding systems. With each temporary encounter, your brain learns that attachment is fleeting, that intimacy is disposable. Over time, this conditioning crosses a threshold. You can still feel attraction, still enjoy company, still perform intimacy. But the capacity for a deep, lasting bond is gone. Jung would describe this as the death of the archetypal marriage, the collapse of the unconscious foundation for union. Nietzsche would see it as nihilism in its purest form, when the possibility of meaning itself disintegrates. The tragedy is that you may not realize you have crossed the event horizon until it is too late. Early encounters feel controllable, even harmless. But each one pulls you closer. One day you wake up and find that permanent love feels impossible, not because you don't want it, but because your nervous system can no longer recognize it. The existential tragedy. This is where the consequences become existential. You thought you were experimenting, enjoying freedom, exploring. In reality, you were dismantling your own architecture of love. Phantom pains haunt you with ghosts. Malware corrupts your operating system. The black hole devours your ability to bond. And in the end, you are left with the greatest tragedy. Not that you cannot find love, but that even if love appears, you cannot receive it. You can see this in daily life. The man who meets an incredible woman but sabotages the relationship because he no longer trusts his own feelings. The woman who finds a kind and loving partner but feels bored because authentic intimacy feels flat compared to the artificial intensity of conquest. They are not rejecting love consciously. Their systems have been rewired. They are spiritual refugees, exiled from the very thing they crave most. Nietzsche once wrote that what does not kill us makes us stronger. But here lies the cruel twist. Casual sex does not kill you outright. It kills you slowly, by eroding your strength, by hollowing out your capacity for meaning. And Jung would add, the unconscious never forgives what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. Repressed consequences do not vanish, they return, amplified, until they shatter you. This is why the stakes are so high. Casual sex is not just a private choice. It is an existential wager with your soul. You may think you are choosing pleasure, but in reality, you are choosing fragmentation. You may think you are avoiding pain, but in reality, you are creating wounds that never heal. And you may think you are free, but in reality, you are drifting closer to the event horizon where freedom is lost forever. The question then is simple but terrifying. How close are you to that point of no return? We have journeyed through illusions and metaphors, through the warnings of Nietzsche and Jung, and through the tragic consequences that casual sex carves into the human soul. Now we stand at the crossroads, and the question is no longer abstract, it is personal. What will you choose? Nietzsche's challenge was clear. Do not inherit your values blindly. Do not accept what society calls freedom when it is, in truth, slavery. He spoke of the Bermensch, the one who creates values, who dares to live by standards forged from strength, not weakness. To follow him is to resist decadence, to reject the counterfeit pleasures of the herd, and to build a life that is not reactive but creative. Casual sex for Nietzsche is not liberation but surrender. It is surrender to impulses you did not choose, to patterns you did not create, to values designed to keep you weak. To transcend it is to reclaim your will to power, not as domination over others, but as mastery over yourself. Jung's answer was individuation, the process of becoming whole. He taught that wholeness does not come from scattering yourself across masks, roles, and encounters, but from integrating every part of yourself, the shadow, the fear, the longing, the capacity to love. Individuation demands courage. It requires you to stand alone without distraction, to confront the loneliness you once tried to drown in pleasure, and to transform it into wisdom. Jung would say that only when you embrace your shadow without being possessed by it, can you begin to live authentically. Casual sex is the opposite. It is possession without awareness, fragmentation without integration. So the choice is stark. You can continue down the path of counterfeit intimacy, fragmented mirrors, phantom bonds, and existential emptiness. Or you can stop right here, right now, and begin the dangerous, difficult, but liberating work of reclaiming yourself. And here is the truth that both Nietzsche and Jung would insist upon. Knowledge without action is meaningless. To see the trap is not enough. To recognize the lie is not enough. You must act. You must dare to live differently from the culture around you. You must be willing to say no to what everyone else says yes to. And in doing so, you will discover that what seemed like deprivation is actually abundance. What seemed like slavery is actually freedom. Because freedom is not the ability to indulge every craving. Freedom is the ability to master your cravings. Love is not the abundance of connections. Love is the depth of a single true bond. Strength is not the applause of the herd. Strength is the quiet courage to live by principles no one else understands. You are not just choosing what to do with your body. You are choosing what to become with your soul. And once certain bridges are burned, they cannot be rebuilt. The event horizon waits for those who sleepwalk through life, mistaking decadence for empowerment. But you are awake now. You see the machine clearly. And once you see, you can no longer pretend you don't. So I leave you with this question. What will your future self thank you for? The fleeting thrill of counterfeit intimacy, or the lasting strength of a life built on authenticity, wholeness, and truth? The choice is yours. Choose wisely. If this message resonated with you, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next awakening conversation. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share the lesson, metaphor, or insight that struck you the most. Your words may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. This is more than a channel. This is a community of seekers, of those daring to look deeper, think harder, and live truer. Your future self is watching. Let's walk this path of awakening together.